I'm joined by Martin Daubney of the Reclaim Party. Martin.
Absolute pleasure. Great to be here. Long-term admirer of yours back from the Sargon days. First time we've ever met in person.
It is.
So I'm really looking forward to this.
No, I'm really glad you came down because we've got a bunch of stuff I really want to talk to you about, really. Let's talk about Ethan Klein's bomb threats. And this, I think, is just a marvellous example of how the blade of tolerance only ever cuts one way.
Yeah.
You know, it's if you know the right people in America, then, well, you know, you can say practically anything. You don't get your channel taken down. But anyway, before we begin, I'd like to promote an interview we have on lotus.com with Dave Raboy. He is a fellow at the Claremont Institute and a friend of Ron DeSantis. And we were lucky enough to have him come down and give us an interview where we talk about America's problems, because America has lots and lots of problems, as we constantly see in the news. For example, the recent shooting in Texas is just the worst thing when you go through it. Like, the more that comes out, the worse it gets. Right. This next link is just a list of the timestamps of the students in the school while the shooter is in there calling the police. You can see that for nearly an hour, they're calling the police in the middle of it and no one's coming. Why? Because the cops are standing outside. There were like 100 cops or something. 150 cops were standing around outside. And so the question is, well, why didn't they go in there? And the answer, according to one Texas official, was, well, the police would have been in trouble. And afterwards, they were like, well, this wasn't the right decision. Like, oh, brilliant.
Yeah, it's an absolutely astonishing dereliction of duty when you look at that timeline. My sister has just been over. She lives in Texas. And she's absolutely astonished about what went on. You saw a case of parents climbing over fences, getting handcuffed, getting out of handcuffs, trying to get into the school themselves. And yet we have a bunch of coppers who are trained to put their lives at stake when it matters, and they were just cowards. There's no other way of looking at it.
Well, I mean, they were told not to go in there. And I mean, thankfully, they're like, oh, that wasn't the right decision. So, yeah, well done, genius. But the official reason was given to us by a Lieutenant Christopher Oliveras, who said they were hearing gunshots, they were receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded further without knowing where the suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. So, right. So, for the protection of the police, they decided not to engage with the shooter. So, what are the police for?
Yeah, I mean, they should really reconsider their career choice.
Yeah.
If they're worried about getting in the line of fire in a state where you can openly carry weapons. I've been to Texas, I've been in bars. Oh my God, that guy's got a gun on his holster. It's completely commonplace.
Yeah.
And if you're an enforcement officer, and you're not aware that could be an issue, particularly in a school, then really you're in the wrong job.
Yeah.
Go and work in the civil service.
Well, absolutely. And like, what do you think the job? And the thing is, there is an argument in America. Well, it's actually not their job. And it's like, well, then you need to redefine their job role, don't you?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's such a political hot potato, and every time it happens, we're talking about double standards again. You know, let's ban weapons. Let's bomb the NRA. We'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But really, you know, you are the first point of call, and when you're seeing parents pleading, begging, and attempting to get in themselves without a weapon, we've got to ask some serious questions about what went wrong there.
And this point was well made by, of all people, Ethan Klein, who posted this very sharp meme on Twitter with the kindergartners taking the fire for the Texas cops. And he's not wrong that this is a failure of the police in Texas. Good guys with guns be like. And it's like, yeah, but not in most cases, actually. In most cases, in fact, there's becoming quite a litany of cases where a single individual with a gun actually prevents a tragedy. But anyway, before we go on to the rest of what Ethan's opinions on this were, which failed to live up to this one, let's very briefly talk about the absolute hero cop who was getting his haircut at the time, got a text from his wife, who's a teacher in the school, and says, as an active shooter, help, I love you. So he borrowed the shotgun of the barber and went in and saved a bunch of children, including his own 8-year-old daughter. This was Jacob Alvarado. So, you know, salutes in the chat for him. Yeah. But the interesting thing is he seems to have actively defied orders not to go in. And this got me thinking, like, how could you have been a policeman outside of this school, hearing the shots, hearing the screams, been like, well, the orders say stay here, lads? Like,
yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder about so many bits of bad policing now seem to be coming from the top down. Same in the UK.
Oh, absolutely.
We look at things like pride marches and gender pronouns, all this nonsense, hardly comparable to this, but nevertheless.
Terrible decisions that are being made.
It's bad policy made at the top, which oftentimes is kind of paralysing officers who want to do the right thing. But this is the sort of guy you want. You want the shotgun guy.
Oh, yeah.
You want the Terminator guy.
Yeah.
Not these guys hiding outside.
If you can get to the next one, John. This report that the Texas Department of Police told us that there were 19 police officers in the hallway at Robb Elementary who made the decision not to break into the room where the children are being shot because they believed it tended to a barricade situation. And they said that it was the chief of police who made the call to stop the Border Patrol tactical unit from entering the school despite the fact that no police officer was injured. Like, that is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and really heads need to roll. I mean, why on earth would that decision be made? I mean, of course, in an open firing situation, police officers' lives are at risk. But really, what's the greater calling? An entire classroom full of kids?
Yeah.
Or one cop whose job is to do that?
I mean, if you're an adult man, you've got an obligation, a moral obligation to try and defend a child, even if it means the risk of your own life.
Yeah, and I wonder if these I totally agree with that.
I realise it's a very conservative position, very old-fashioned, but, maybe you should try not to,
Like I say, you want shotgun guy at the bar, but it's not Mr. Health and Safety guy.
Exactly.
Who's worried about, a ricochet might scratch one's eye.
And so the reason that I bring this up and go through it is because this has, of course, been an internet firestorm with everyone and their mother having hot takes about it. And Ethan Klein of H3H3 was one of these people. Now, I didn't dislike Ethan a few years ago. I thought his commentary was okay. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah. You can't avoid him. He's got millions of followers, right?
And he used to be quite funny. Like, go back about 5 years. He's a really funny guy. And now he's become exceptionally woke. But the thing is, you can see there's a tension underlying this wokeness because he's not adverse to self-defense for himself. Like, he, as he will explain to us in this clip, owns a shotgun and is prepared to use it. Let's play it.
Shoot you and kill you. Okay. So to say I'm against violence, this is how I sit in bed and I think about the lock combo on my gun cabinet. I imagine how fast I can get there, punch in the code, take out the gun, turn off the safety, put the bullet in the chamber. I think about that obsessively every night. And that's the world I live in. Okay. So I'm not against violence when it's necessary. Punching a guy for saying a stupid joke is not necessary. And if you want to test me, come to my fucking house and I've got 7 bullets. It's a semi-automatic shotgun and I can unleash 7 fucking bullets on you without even have to cock that bitch.
Now, I think that's a totally reasonable position, even though it was given to us by Ethan. But look at what he's saying there. He's saying, as a man, I have an obligation to defend my family. And so he rightfully thinks, how will I do this? And he's got a particular plan. As he was saying, that was from a previous sort of controversy like 6 months ago. But he's right on that.
And it's actually written into Texan law. If somebody breaches your threshold,
that's it,
and they come into your property, then you are legally allowed to shoot them if you believe they will cause harm to your family.
And morally obligated.
Yeah, you'd assume somebody breaking into your house at night would wish to cause harm to your family. Yeah. Therefore, you're allowed to shoot them. Again, my sister sort of told me this. It's completely true. So he's got a point on that. But then his next point...
But that's the point, isn't it? He's got an absolute point on that. And he's right that you should have a gun to defend your family in Texas. That's totally legit. But then he decides, because this particular event has happened, all of that goes out of the window. And so I don't want to just, recycle fairly tired talking points, but it doesn't justify taking away the gun ownership rights of legal firearm users because some tragedy has happened. It's just not justified. And yet Ethan has got himself worked up into a lather on this on Twitter from the leftist perspective, which is literally only the state should have guns, which sounds very fascist.
Or him. He's allowed guns.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? He thinks, disarm everyone except, me, because I might need this for my own defense. But anyway, let's play this clip.
So there was a big protest outside the NRA meeting, which was good. Do we have any insight into what they're actually talking about there at the NRA meeting that's today in Texas? Someone should bomb that building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, here we go again. For me, this is a straight-up conversation about double standards, because you know full well, if somebody with your political persuasion or myself made the same point, we'd be off social media at a shot,
Gone.
done, dead, dusted. And this guy can just walk away. I think this whole conversation is about double standards. And that's why I think they go woke. They go woke as self-protection and to keep their careers going.
Yep, and you're absolutely right. It's about self-protection. But so if you can get to the next one, there is a longer clip that gives a bit more context on this, and you'll wonder why I'm not using the clip from his own YouTube channel. So, well, someone actually did take it down. They actually did report this, and YouTube did take this podcast down. But that's it. You know, it's like one thing. It's like if that were me saying this, I'd probably get my channel taken down, not just that video.
Well, we made a video with Mike Yeadon, Alex here as director, and he spoke about stuff which is provably true and has come out in the wash is true, medical truths. But we were taken down within 4 hours, and our channel had a hard strike. Yeah. And basically never really recovered from that. And that's the difference. This guy will have one video down, he'll be back up and running before the day's out. But
the full context is that he, as you can see, someone's posted the higher thing. And he does roll this back. He's like, oh, I've gone too far. I didn't mean that. I take it back. And someone on Twitter claimed responsibility for this, getting his video yeeted. But again, it's like this, it's hard to have any sympathy for this. Now, I'm not in favor of people just striking each other's channels and whatnot, because obviously, that's just going to take lashes out of all content creators, and no one's going to be happy with this. But this is the paradigm that they've created, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, but there's a long and illustrious relationship that the liberal left has with the concept of virtuous violence. You remember like Punch a Nazi?
Oh, yeah.
And it was okay to milkshake Nigel Farage, but you couldn't shout at Anna Soubry. Yeah. There's this complete double standards. If you look at even people like Nelson Mandela, dare we mention he was on the FBI's most wanted list for years.
Dare we mention he was a terrorist?
Yeah, he was a terrorist, and his wife used to like setting fire to tyres. They just happened to have people inside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was seen as, well, you've got to break a few eggs to make an omelette on the left. Yeah. But if you shout something at liberals or left, you're a fascist and you deserve to be cancelled forever. That's the conversation. It's complete double standards.
Yeah, and this is something they call repressive tolerance. Yeah. But anyway, so he had to deal with this on Twitter, and I just want to go through some of the things he said, because I find this fascinating. If you go to the next one, John, he says, Conservatives got triggered over jokes I told and mass reported me. I got banned for a week and the episode was removed. So he got a strike as well, so that's good. But again, notice how there had to be a bit of a sort of, the clips go around Twitter and people going, well, hang on a second. You can't just call for the bombing of the NRA conference and then have nothing happen to you. And it was like a few days afterwards that YouTube were like, okay, yeah, we probably should take that down, because it does look a bit improper, doesn't it? Yeah. But anyway, look at this response. If only they cared about dead kids as much as they do jokes. So I want to say sorry. Sorry, you're all the pathetic snowflakes. F the NRA and F Abbott. It's like, Ethan, why is that the appropriate thing to say? Well, what the hell's wrong with you?
Well, he's kind of doubling down. In some senses, I think we should be free speech absolutists. Maybe he shouldn't get a strike. But then again, neither should you or anybody on our sort of side. But that's what this is about. It's about inconsistency of the application of arbitrary rules by YouTube, which they kind of make up as they go along, and then apply it differently to people with their political mindset.
And the thing is, I can accept, okay, no calls for violence. I like I said, I'm a free speech absolutist as well. I think that the moral onus is on the person who commits the act. End of story. And that's where it just stops. But I can understand that for the concerns that YouTube might have over influential speech and things like that. They say on our platform you can't call for violence. That's a fairly reasonable restriction. But again, like this wasn't a joke, was it, Ethan? Otherwise you wouldn't have walked it back. And this is in fact the point that Keemstar made. I love that we report. Bring Martin Daubney on to talk about Twitter drama with you. I don't know why I've done this. But like if you get the next one, Ethan Klein now straight up lying, saying it was a joke. It wasn't a joke at all. It was a statement, and that's true. He wasn't joking. He was angry that the NRA was defending his right to own a shotgun and other people's rights to be armed, and he somehow thinks that this would prevent violence in America. And it's like, okay, we have violence over here that doesn't involve guns.
Yeah, I mean,
how many car attacks have there been?
Yeah, if you tweet about incitement to riots in the UK, then you face a social media, purder immediately. This is, I mean, if you believe in cause and effect, if you believe that tweets can have a real world action, then there has to be, a consistency of application. They clearly don't think that people will bomb a conference because he said it, but they clearly do think that if I call a Remainer a name, that I may cause them physical harm. So it's just ludicrous, really. I think he should be allowed. I'm not massively offended by his comments because I have the agency to not go and bomb something because someone tells a joke. Because that's
crazy.
That's just the sort of person
That's
I am.
mad.
But
how you must be unique among men, Martin.
Yes,
like what?
Guilty. Just charged.
But anyway, the thing about this as well is that Ethan, like, it's embarrassing the way that he's handling this, because it would be easy to say, you know what, I got a bit swept up in the moment. I went too far, and I'm sorry about that. I take my punishment, take my licks as I'm supposed to, and I'll just carry on with my life. But instead, Ethan decided, no, actually, you're evil. I mean, look at this. I want to make it clear I don't advocate for violence of any kind. It's like, well, I mean, you did,
you just
actually. And you said you were joking. You didn't actually apologize for that. But that is obvious to anyone that watched the segment, and not just the 10-second clip that was used to misdirect attention. It's like, no, you did walk it back, but that's because you knew you'd gone too far. And then he says, Republicans are now the party of dead children.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, if you look at where most gun crime happens in America,
it's not in Republican cities,
it tends to be in Democratic-run basket case cities.
Yes.
And it's not school shootings.
Yes.
We see lots of kind of black-on-black massacres with handguns. It's the number one killer.
Yep.
But again, this is an inconvenient truth to people like Ethan. They want the entire conversation to be about radicalized right-wing psychopaths taking innocent lives, therefore ban all guns, while conveniently ignoring the vast majority of actual gun deaths in the United States of America.
And the thing is, in this particular instance, it was a Mexican boy. Is he a radicalized right-winger?
Well, they'll probably make out, in that case, it's just the patriarchy or it's toxic masculinity. There's always a rear guard, get out of jail card if he's not white. I mean, that would be the trifecta.
Yeah. They can't. You can tell that they're thrilled whenever there's a massacre from a white shooter who's got a white nationalist manifesto.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, the NRA isn't the Republican Party anyway. I don't know why he says that. But anyway, Ethan is the real victim here. The victim of his bomb threats. But all that being said, I've never received so many death threats and anti-Semitic S in my life. A lot of conservatives really, really, really hate Jews. What, Ethan? What are you talking about? I mean, I hear you're in favor of death threats. Like, you don't seem to be against it. I know, were they saying they were going to bomb you?
Yeah, it's a microcosm, though. It's a textbook kind of defense case from Ethan here, which just plays out across any one of these little dramas. And that is, say something cretinous, then make out it was just a joke and, hey, it's your fault for not getting it.
And now I'm getting racist or misogynistic abuse.
I'm getting horrible threats against me, therefore I was right all along. It's pathetic.
Yep, and as Jeremy underneath posts, those threats were just edgy jokes. Ethan, chill out.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your argument, Ethan? That's your argument. It's packaged directly back at you, jerk.
And I think we'll find actually most of the anti-Semitic hate incidents doesn't come from the right. It comes from the kind of pro-Palestine loving left.
It also probably comes from foreigners, to be honest.
Yeah, well,
there are people
curveball there.
Well, no, there's
a
lot of it. Like they did a thing about Sadiq Khan, didn't they? Whereas like on his Instagram, he was complaining. It's like, well, most of them came from like Argentina or something. It's like, what do you want us to do about that?
Most of the abusive threats against England players for taking the knee, about 85-89% were from outside of Great Britain.
Because people forget that the foreigners have access to the internet and they don't necessarily share our particular standards of decorum. But just want to give a quick shout out to Lauren Chen here. She's done a good point. You see death threats, like someone calling for you to be bombed or something. Maybe it's just a joke, and it is. And then Ethan just carried on. He's carried on, making an absolute fool of himself on Twitter.
Yeah.
Hey, Donald Trump Jr., remember when your dad inspired an insurrection that killed 6 people? That's not what happened. And Donald Trump Jr. is right to point out that you actually seem to have been inciting violence. You can sit there and mold about this all you like, but you know that that's the case. You did do this. This didn't happen. But you also know that you are not going to get the same treatment as leftists. And as you say, this underpins this entire story. And it always will. This was just an example of how a YouTuber called Ariel Scaracalla, she's an anti-woke feminist, basically. She she happened to be a feminist, and she was like, hang on a second, this is all crazy. She starts speaking about transgenderism and things like that, and she gets her YouTube channel demonetized.
Yeah, and again, just backpedaling there, with the false equivalence of bringing in the Capitol Hill, movement. So it's like, hey, I feel really sad and I'm really upset. But anyway, Donald Trump. Yeah, it's just textbook. It's so ridiculous. But you're right. You can't critique gender theory or back up basic biology, what you see before your eyes. I know we'll come on to that with Stella Creasy soon, without being struck off. Yet he can get away with what he wants. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, and it took a coordinated effort from people on the internet to just get him a strike on his channel. Yeah. Like YouTube would have been all over us for one show. Just one show was taken down for a bit. Right, the whole channel can be allowed to run.
Exactly. They would have been all over us within seconds.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content on the site, such as the Politics of Four Lions premium video between John and Carl. And if you want to follow what else John's putting out, you can follow him on Getter at John Wheatley on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.